I'm on my last video in this series on the church called Best Practices. There'll be more series, but this is the last one in this series of 4, although there's 5 videos. Go figure. This particular today, the topic is the redirection of selflessness in the church. And we're going to come a little bit from another angle today, Isaiah. Jesus often quoted Isaiah, especially when he was communicating about kingdom culture. Here he comes from the 57th chapter, chiding groups at the temple to fend off the systematic attempt to capitalize on people who are trying to have access to God. Really, he keys in on their selfishness. The fact that we are God's temple, as Paul notes, God is not housed in temples made by human hands, is an important prayer that is a place to fight the vicious attempts by our culture to always refocus attention on ourselves. As was noted in the last chapter on one of the challenges that our churches are facing is the loss of selflessness. Selflessness is one of those virtues foundational to our faith that can be lost through days of a high-paced lifestyle. Some suggestions include attempting to boil things down to the lowest common denominator. Live simply and allow the rediscovery of spiritual life of Christ to sort of satisfy our soul. We are reminded that the journey of spiritual life begins first with one foundational component. And here it is: God speaks. This is foundational to our faith. Action that it requires is simply this: listen. Listen to Him. And listening is otherwise known as praying. We've got to listen. God speaks in a variety of ways, but we must begin with this foundation. It's not simply enough to pray a prayer to God to begin an authentic life. When we come to the place where we understand not only is it that there is a God we can pray to, but one we can hear from, that changes everything. Among evangelicals has occurred what I consider a pandemic of a one-sided perception and behavior of communicating with God. A constant verbal prayer life really betrays an egocentric problem. I have many people who come to me and say, "Dave, I can't hear from God." Here's what I want to say. You're sitting under the Master. While He graciously receives your petitions, more often He already knows what you need before you ask. What makes more sense to me in a creator-creation relationship is that there is more input from whom? Humanity or from divinity. The spiritual journey is more of one listening and seeing rather than speaking and being seen. Recentering on Christ, a Christocentric prayer is a vital well, full of water, deep water that quenches thirst when received with a quieted mind. Christocentric prayer begins with trust. Trust that time is valuable. Trust that one does not have to bring some capital, even input from the table. Trust that the words of Christ are re-energizing and regenerating, even in subtle admonishment and encouragement. Trust knowing that His affirmation is not predicated on our performance, but on His faithfulness to us. Out of His grace and out of His intercession toward us, both through His words and presence, is sanctificate. Saturation is essential for hearing. This practice will be one of the most difficult to loyally, faithfully assume. But it will reap a harvest of integrity, solidarity, and vitality to those who practice it. And I want to finish this series with that, because I believe that that's a critical thing for us to practice. We look forward to seeing you again in our series. Bye-bye.